Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Do you believe God exists? Have you seen God? Do you believe God exists because someone told you God exists? Or do you believe God exists because you've experienced God in your life? Well, brothers and sisters in Islam and respected guests, I'm here today to tell you and stand before you and declare that I believe God exists. I believe God is one, alone with no partners. And I believe this because I've experienced God personally in my life. The words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran say in Surah Al-Fusilat, we will show them our signs in the horizons and within themselves until it becomes clear to them that it is the truth. "15 years ago, I sat in the church with my father and my pastor, and I looked at them both straightly and I said, very frankly, I don't believe in your God, okay? I don't believe in your God. At least, I don't believe Jesus is God. I mean, maybe he was a prophet. Maybe he was a holy man. Maybe he was a myth. Maybe he didn't exist. All I know is, if there is a God, and I'm not sure about that, it wasn't Jesus. And I was very sure of that. Why? Because the Injil, the Bible tells us this. Jesus tells us about himself in the Injil, verily I tell you the truth, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can only do what he sees the Father doing. Well, my definition of God is an all-powerful God. And Jesus just said he had no power except for the Father. But my church said I should worship Jesus as the Lord of the universe. But the Bible tells us when Jesus was asked, what is the most important commandment? They came to him, some scholars, said, what's the most important commandment of all the commandments? And Jesus replied to them, he said, the most important commandment is this, know, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Well, I didn't give God another thought for a couple of years, right? I was a teenager, I was pretty rebellious as a teenager, and one day my dad sat me down for a discussion, and he said I had two choices, quit smoking pot or get out of his house. So I got out of his house, I got my own apartment, I moved out on my own, and you know, as a teenager with not a lot of money, I had to get like the cheapest place I could, right? So I ended up with this apartment on sort of the wrong side of town, and it was this old like Polish mansion. It was huge, like converted into subdivided units, and the place was haunted, okay, like full of jinn, all right? You know, so we say ghosts in English, but this place was haunted with like a capital H. So there were plenty of strange noises from the first moment I moved in, like really weird things. But, you know, I didn't believe in God or the hereafter or angels or demon, any of that nonsense. I was like, oh, must be the pipes, must be, you know, whatever. And then during my first week in the apartment, I was woken up at like 3 in the morning with this knocking on the wall. I was like, that's weird, you know. Maybe someone's trying to get into someone else's apartment. So I was getting a little nervous. This is very weird, right? But the knocking continued. So I started to get a little scared. It's like, what's going on? So in my mind, I'm trying to rationalize these things like, okay, what could it be? Could it be the wind? Could it be this? Could it be that? And I couldn't explain it. And the weird thing was, this knocking kept getting closer and closer and closer to me. It went all the way down from one side of my apartment all the way into my bedroom, on the wall, again and again, until eventually the noise was right behind my head. Now, it's no understatement to say I was absolutely terrified. I was like sitting up in bed, completely stiff and like, oh, what's going on? You know, my hair was standing up, and you know, the noise was right behind my head, and it was knocking and knocking, and finally it stopped. I was like, oh, whew. I was very relieved, right? So I laid back down in bed, and I said, oh, thank God. I was like, wait a second, I don't believe in God. Yeah, it was just some, you know, whatever, it was the wind or something. And then crash! The window of my room slammed shut right in front of my own eyes. There was no wind, not even a breeze. I was terrified. I jumped out of bed, threw on my clothes, grabbed my cell phone, you know, raced out of my apartment, and who's the one person I called? I called my dad. I said, Dad, you gotta come get me. I can't sleep in my apartment tonight. It's haunted. There's, you know, demons, da-da-da-da. Like, so thank God I have a very patient father. He just kind of sighed. okay, where are you? I'm coming. I'll pick you up. And so he came and picked me up, and on the way back home, I remember something he said to me. He said, you know, Matthew, if you believe in God and you ask for God's protection, God will protect you. And God is all-powerful, so you have nothing to fear. And that stuck with me. But for the first time in my life, I was forced to confront that there's this world, that there's this realm that I can't see and I can't explain. The Quran says in Surah number 6, verse 104, now have come to you from your Lord proofs to open your eyes. If you will see, it will be for the good of your own soul. So a year or so later, I started researching other religions. I thought, okay, maybe there's this other realm, but I was kind of looking for something. And so I studied Buddhism, I studied Hinduism, I read the Bhagavad Gita, I even tried yoga, I practiced yoga for a while. But for some reason, I was drawn back to the Bible. Maybe because it was familiar. So the first serious relationship I had in my life was with an Iranian girl. And in fact, on our second date, I still remember she was telling me a little bit about her religion, and she's like, oh yeah, in my religion, a man can have 4 wives. And I laughed. I thought she was joking. I laughed in her face, and I feel bad now because I insulted her, actually. But, you know, we grew closer and closer in our fondness for one another, but it was a forbidden relationship. It was a haram relationship. And she hid me from her family for many months. But as things got more and more serious, we started to consider a future together. So eventually she introduced me to her family, and they actually really liked me. And believe it or not, they accepted me. But there was just one thing. She said, well, if we're going to have a future together, if you want to marry me, you have to become Muslim. I was like, I have to become Muslim? I was like, you're not even practicing. Why should I become a Muslim? Like, what's so special about your religion that I should take your religion, you know? But I was like, okay, that's fine. I don't have a religion. You know, I can say, oh, maybe I'll declare I'm Muslim, but maybe it's just going to be in words. But anyway, I'm a technical guy. I'm an engineer, right? So I wanted to learn, you know, technically what am I getting myself into, right? I wanted to read the fine print of the religion, right? So I started studying Islam from sort of an academic perspective. So, you know, I started to study Islam, and actually my mom was very supportive. She bought me a DVD lecture series on Islam. It was sort of a very academic study of Islam, and I started really enjoying what I was learning. The more I learned about Islam, the more I realized, wow, this is kind of already what I believe. This is great. And it's, you know, Islam seemed like what I already believed. But this part of my story doesn't end the way you might be thinking, because in 2011, we went to this Valentine's Day party, and when we left the party, I noticed the way she was looking at another guy, and within 1 week, we had broken up. It wasn't the right match. It was not the right match. So this future we've been dreaming and planning for together was instantly torn apart, right? And we were both really torn up about it. But, you know, I felt in a way like a part of my identity had been taken from me. And I mean, I'd even learned Farsi for this girl, right? I actually speak semi-fluent Farsi to this day. And, you know, all that was sort of taken from me. And I was still reading Quran and learning about Islam. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to continue doing this. You know, I'm interested in this. I'll just continue learning. So in my heartbreak, I sort of drew near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in learning about Islam. Surely by the remembrance of Allah, our hearts set at rest. In Surah Al-Ra'd. So I wasn't looking for religion. Again, I was looking for comfort. But the more I learned about Islam, the more comfort I found. And the more beautiful I realized that Islam really was. And then one night I had a dream. This wasn't an ordinary dream. This was a very, very vivid dream. And in this dream, I was praying salat in a masjid, in community, in jama'ah. And when I made sujood, I had the most amazing feeling come into my body. A feeling of taqwa, or God consciousness. Brothers and sisters, I cannot describe the beauty of this feeling. I felt it in my heart. And that was it. When I woke up, I said, this is a clear sign. I accept the religion of Islam. I'm Muslim now. I believe, God, you are one alone with no partners, and I believe Muhammad is your messenger. That was it. That's how I became Muslim. Allahu Akbar. But thank you so much for inviting me, and Jazakallah khair for the organizers, and I'm happy to answer any questions about anything I've said, or in general anything about my journey to Islam, inshallah.